Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tony Trahan with the Office of Mental Health. I want to thank everyone for coming today on this webinar on forensic patient and staff perspectives at civil facilities. Just a brief orientation for webinars for people who haven't attended before. Due to the number of people that we have attending, we do have to keep the lines muted. However, we do want this to be as interactive as possible, so please feel free to ask questions via the chat function on the webinar control panel. I will be monitoring the chat log throughout the webinar, so you can send in questions at any time. If you have a question about a particular piece of terminology or an acronym that we use that you're not familiar with, please send that in, and I will ask the presenters to clarify that for you. During the webinar, you may experience momentary lapses in the audio. This is normal and should not interfere with the overall content of the presentation. The webinar is being recorded and will be archived, so you can also go back, if you did miss something significant, you can also go back and take a look at it then. You will receive the link to the archived version in a follow-up email. Please feel free to share that link with anyone else in your agency or anyone as you see fit that might be interested in that. We currently have 50 people on the line right now, and that number will probably go up a little bit as we get into this. People are finishing up their lunch or whatever. When the webinar ends, you will receive a short survey. If you could please take the time to fill that out. Everyone attending will receive a certificate via email. If people are sharing a computer to view the webinar, please list all the people requesting a certificate, and they will all be sent as attachments to you in one email. Now, I apologized last time, and I'll apologize this time. I'm very, very behind on sending out the certificates. If you do need the certificates for proof for your supervisor or for CPRP credits or something like that, please let me know, and I will get it to you expeditiously. So for today, this is a good subject because we haven't done this subject before, so this is the first time that we're doing it, and I just want to do a little intro here. So it's not unusual for people with mental health issues to come into contact with law enforcement at some point in their lives. This almost always results in a worse outcome than people without mental health problems. We are more likely to be incarcerated, we're more likely to serve out the full sentence, we're more likely to be victimized in prison, and we're more susceptible to recidivism. When people find themselves navigating both the mental health system and the criminal justice system, they begin a very long and difficult journey back to society. The Office of Consumer Affairs and the Division of Forensic Services have built a strong working relationship to balance the culture built around safety and security with the current best practices to promote recovery and hope. I'm very honored and I'm very pleased to have such a strong relationship with our two presenters today. Our first presenter, Harry Hughley, he will provide an introduction into a systems overview and the requirements for people with mental health issues in the forensic system. So that's going to be a good sort of forensic 101. And then our second presenter, Deborah Chard-Worsham, she will provide a sample of some of the common themes from a series of focus groups conducted in 2009, and we may touch base on some of the things some of the changes that we made based on those focus groups. So for our first presenter, Harry Hughley, excuse me, he has more than 35 years experience in the delivery of forensic mental health services. He has developed a unique, deep, and comprehensive understanding of the issues involved in the organization, development, and implementation of mental health service strategies for forensic patients. Harry's experience crosses the lines of 3 states, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York. Harry served as the Director of Forensic Services for the state of Rhode Island. In this capacity, Harry was directly responsible for the administration and for the delivery of forensic services to the Department of Corrections and to the Divisions of Mental Retardation and Mental Health. During the course of his tenure as the Director of Forensic Services for the state of Rhode Island, Harry was a member of the National Association of State Mental Health Forensic Directors, which is a subdivision of National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. In this organization, Harry served as the Executive Secretary for several years. Harry currently oversees OMH's operations involving CPL patients, and he'll tell you what CPL means, but CPL patients who are under the auspices of the Commissioner of the Office of Mental Health. He is well-versed in the statutory, regulatory, and court mandates and their impacts upon the delivery of forensic mental health services. and with a bachelor's degree in applied social relations and theology, as well as a master's degree in medical sociology, Harry brings the kind of insight to this field that is a valued asset to the effective and efficient operations of ONH's forensic services, and it's an honor for me to have him here today. I'm glad that I'm working with him, and he's done an awful lot in educating me around the whole new world of forensic mental health services. So without further ado, Harry.
Thank you, Tony, for that very fine and flattering introduction. I hope I can live up to the expectations that you may have generated in this audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to speak for a couple of minutes, give you a very quick and necessarily brief overview of what forensic services is about, so you can have some type of appreciation of the kinds of challenges that we are faced with within this system. My first slide didn't slide. Just a second. This?
Yep.
Or should I?
If not, if that doesn't work, then
Okay.
there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Let me roll back. Okay. My first slide. It is widely recognized that persons with mental illness may come in contact with the criminal justice system. Each of these public service systems have developed values, missions, and goals related to fulfilling their respective statutory and regulatory mandates. When we look at these systems, we'll see a couple of things. One, just looking at the mental health system. It provides an array of services, and the emphasis in some is on healing. Then, by contrast, we go to the correctional system, or the criminal justice system. We have the emphasis on public safety. Where these two systems meet, it's the interface of these two systems we call forensic services. And what the forensic services tries to do is provide a balance of view, or balancing the services or the demands between the actually conflictual demands of the mental health system and the criminal justice system. Forensic mental health services represents a focused and coordinated and collaborative effort between the state, local governmental units designed to address these issues, concerns, and needs which invariably arises from the interface of these two very different systems. The Bureau of Institutional and Transitional Services is operating under the auspices of the Office of Mental Health within the Division of Forensic Services, addresses the service needs of people with mental illness and who are in the criminal justice system. Our charge is to maintain a balance between the individual's right to treatment in the least restrictive environment, as well as public safety. The Bureau coordinates the placement of persons and oversees the delivery of mental health services to individuals who are committed to the custody of the Commissioner pursuant to various sections of our criminal procedure laws, that's the CPL that Tony mentioned earlier, and our correction laws, abbreviated CL. The population served by forensic facilities include the pretrial felony defendants who are found incompetent to stand trial pursuant to CPL 730. That's Section 730 of the Criminal Procedure Law. And these people are housed at either of the following secure facilities. That's Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center, Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center, Rochester Regional Forensic Unit, which is part of Rochester Psychiatric Center. And then we have the Northeast Regional Forensic Unit, which is a subsection or subdivision of Central New York Psychiatric Center. Defendants found not responsible for criminal conduct due to mental disease or defect pursuant to the provisions of CPL 33020 are housed at Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center, Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center, and Rochester Regional Forensic Unit. Our pretrial detainees in local correctional facilities in need of inpatient care pursuant to the provisions of Corrections Law, Section 508, are typically housed in the Northeast Regional Forensic Unit. Sometimes these people are referred to local community hospital, and when they are, they must be accompanied by sheriff guards. Inmates sentenced to state and local correctional facilities in need of inpatient care pursuant to the provisions of Correctional Law 402 are housed and treated at Central New York Psychiatric Center. A little bit now more about the 330-20s, because this subgroup comprises our most demanding and intensive treatment cohort. The current statute was enacted in 1980, what became known as the Incentive Defense Reform Act of 1980. This statute is the New York State's legislature attempt to ensure the protection of the public from future dangerous acts of individuals found not criminally responsible, while simultaneously guaranteeing the civil rights of these individuals. The statute provides for the periodic court review of CPL patients' needs for secure hospital-based treatment, non-secure hospital-based treatment, and community-based treatment. The Commissioner's role is to provide persons subject to CPL 330-20 with a level of care and treatment that maintains the balance between the individual's right to be treated in the least restrictive environment while safeguarding the public. Now I'm putting up a chart that illustrates, in part, the process that CPL 330-20 patients have gone through to arrive at this legal status. You'll see I have three vertical rectangular figures. One at the top is marked plea or verdict. This represents the outcome of a trial process that the individual has gone through and it has been found not responsible by reason of mental disease or defect in court. The court then issues an examination order. The examination order can be for either inpatient or outpatient. That person is, pursuant to this order, is referred to an OMH facility. In most cases, the person goes to a secure facility, such as those mentioned earlier, Kirby or Mid-Hudson, for an examination. And the examination is done, and at the conclusion of the examination, a report, or two reports, and these two reports are sent back to court, and the court then conducts what is the statute referred to as an initial hearing. The outcome of the initial hearing is to decide the fate of that individual. And on my bottom row there, you'll see I have three rectangular figures. One is marked track 1, the second is track 2, and the third is track 3. Each depicts a different outcome for a person that has been acquitted or found not responsible due to mental disease or defect. With the track 1 individual, these individuals have been determined to be to have a dangerous mental disorder, and they are referred to a secure facility, such as Kirby and Mid-Hudson. In track 2, individuals are found not to have a dangerous mental disorder, but are found to have a mental illness to the extent that they need treatment, and they can be treated in a civil or a non-secure state-operated facility. So these people are referred to the non-secure facilities under a commitment order, civil commitment order, that is good for 6 months. After that point, it is renewable under our mental hygiene laws as distinct from the criminal procedure laws. And then we have track 3. These people have been found not dangerous, not to have a dangerous mental disorder, and not mentally ill in the sense that they need treatment as inpatients in an inpatient facility. They are routinely given what we would call a conditional discharge. They are released directly to the community with what the courts call an order of conditions. And the order of conditions is good for 5 years, which the order of conditions contains certain terms and stipulations that the person must comply with.
Excuse me, Harry.
Yes.
We do have a question that I need clarification on. When you say commissioner, are you referring to the Office of Mental Health Commissioner or a county commissioner?
I'm referring to the Office of Mental Health in this particular instance. It could be either the Office of Mental Health or the Office of Office of Persons with Disabilities.
OPWDD?
OPWDD,
okay.
Yes.
Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities.
Yes. Change the name on it. Okay. And I'm old, so I can't adapt that quickly. So it could be either one of those state commissioners. Any more questions? Okay. A continuum of services include treatment in a secure or non-secure facility, the awarding of privileges such as on-campus and off-campus furlough privileges. Some of the privileges require court approval, while others are left up to the discretion of the facility's administration. Then we have a community-based treatment. Our responsibilities of the Bureau of Institutional and Transitional Services is to provide guidance and directions to treatment staff in facilities, to review requests for applications for privileges and changes in status, such as going from a secure facility to a non-secure facility, escorted or unescorted furloughs, conditional release, and even unconditional discharges. We monitor the course of individual treatments to ensure continuity and relevance, and we monitor the course of individual treatment to ensure that the balance between the individual's right to treatment in a least restrictive setting and public safety are maintained. And I believe that's the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, so our next presenter, excuse me, our next presenter is Deborah Chard-Worsham. She is currently working for the New York State Office of Mental Health's Division of Forensic Services in the Bureau of Institutional and Transitional Services, BITS, as we now are familiar with that acronym. She has a dual master's degree in social work and criminal justice from the State University of New York at Albany, and a doctorate in criminology also from SUNY. Over the last 2 decades, she has worked for several state agencies, including the Department of Correctional Services and the Division of Criminal Justice Services, as well as the Office of Mental Health. She has done research in a wide variety of substantive areas, including juvenile delinquency, female offenders, recidivism, risk scoring, domestic violence, community reentry, suicide prevention, and most recently, research on forensic populations. Now today, Dr. Chard-Worsham will be presenting on some qualitative research she completed in 2009 that involved focus groups with individuals who had been found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. And I also want to say that she is a pleasure to work with. We have a really good working relationship. I pester her when we need to get some things done, and then she pesters me when I forget about things that need to be done. So we have a really good working relationship. It's a pleasure to have her here today, and thank you for presenting, Deb.
Okay, thanks so much, Tony, and thanks again for this to the Office of Consumer Affairs for inviting forensics to have this webinar. So for the next 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about some focus groups that we did in 2009, share with you what we learned about from these focus groups with our CPL patients. Before I do, I'd just like to say that this was the focus groups that we did were the first time that central office made an effort to systematically speak with forensic patients. We didn't know what to expect or how this would go, but we were pleasantly surprised when patients told us how much they appreciated the time we spent talking with them about their treatment experiences. Patients speak with their treatment team all the time, but they said that having, quote-unquote, Albany make an effort to speak with them and really listen to what they had to say meant a lot. So that was just a small but very positive outcome that I wanted to share with you before we begin. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the purpose of the focus groups that we did, the methodologies that we used. I'm going to summarize some themes from the focus groups, themes about forensic facilities, about civil facilities, and then talk a little bit about what happened after the focus groups. So the purpose of the focus groups that we did was to understand how forensic patients felt about their treatment journey. We wanted to know what kinds of experiences they felt were helpful, what kinds of experiences were difficult for them, and what suggestions, if any, they may have for us for improving their treatment journey. We know that facility staff already make efforts to survey or talk to consumers, but this, as I said, was our opportunity, OMH Central Office, to gather feedback, and ultimately it was very beneficial. It gave us some time for internal reflection, and it's helped us to incorporate patient voices in our discussions about how we might be better able to strategize around some of the issues that civil facilities and patients have brought to our attention. The goal really was to take a moment to place ourselves in the patient's shoes. It was not about assessing the accuracy of their thinking. It was all about us trying to put our finger on the pulse of a patient's perceptions. By the way, I'm using the term patients because this is the word our focus group participants use to refer to themselves. So I chose that word over other words like clients or consumers in our presentation. Just a brief note about our methodology. We did focus groups in 3 civil facilities, 4 focus groups, totaling 26 patients. Now, focus groups, as you may know, are very different from scientific surveys that result in quantitative statistics. Focus groups are really about obtaining rich, qualitative information on the whats and whys of how people think and feel. And of course, how people think or feel may or may not be, reality, but it's true for them, and that is what you are seeking to uncover. Also, the results may or may not be generalizable to all of our forensic patients or to all forensic facilities. So focus groups is really one of several qualitative tools that just give us a tiny window into what is going on for some individuals and for what might be going on with other individuals. We also did staff interviews, group discussions. By and large, we were amazed at the congruity in responses between staff and patients. This indicated to us that, by and large, staff had a very good understanding of patients' frustrations and satisfactions. We also had some patient and staff questionnaires that we made available, but of course the richest information came from the discussions in our focus groups. And finally, we summarized the themes from the focus groups. A theme is basically a central or dominating idea or perspective that was discussed by participants in the focus groups. Now, I'm going to just share with you today about a dozen themes, but I have a longer list of about 30 themes that were discussed in the focus groups. So today, as I said, I'm presenting some of those themes, and although I could have presented only the positive themes, I've chosen to also share with you the more difficult, maybe not so positive themes, because in my mind, those are the themes that require more team effort discussion and thought from all of us here today. While there was some variation by facility, for the most part, many of the themes were repeated across the facilities. Also, just a note about themes, there was a noticeable difference between patients who were recently transferred from a secure facility versus those who transferred to a civil years ago. Primarily, recently transferred patients had much more positive things to say about their secure facility experience than patients who had transferred to their transferred several years ago. As a creative attempt to better present the nuances of what patients shared in the focus groups, I've used some pictures and voiceovers in the slides of my presentation. However, you need to know that these are not pictures or voices of actual patients. Okay, so let's talk a little bit first about themes from forensic facilities. Recently transferred CPL patients appreciated several aspects of treatment, educational, and vocational opportunities that they had at their secure facilities. The structure, frequency, and substance of the programs patients said made them feel like they actually did learn valuable lifelong lessons about their illness and managing any propensity for violence. Patients also reported that there were concrete goals at the programs in their secure facility. This gave them a sense of accomplishment when they achieved each goal. At the same time, many patients felt that within the facility there were certain wards or programs or certain staff persons that were more helpful than others. These patients described themselves as being lucky enough or to get a good ward or good program or to have a good, quote-unquote, good psychologist or social worker. In any case, for recently transferred patients, when they discussed their experience at their secure facility and compared it to their civil, they were appreciative of the kinds of programming they had at their secure facility.
I learned a lot at Kirby. I did a group where they explained the forensic process and the leader broke it down for us. It made us feel a part of the process. If we understand more, we'll understand what we have to do to move on to the next level.
The groups are more extensive at Mid-Hudson, and everyone is at the same level. The treatment team relationships are also much closer. I saw my psychologist regularly at Mid-Hudson, but in the more than 2 years I have been here, I've only seen my psychologist about 3 times, and only for about 30 seconds each time.
CPL patients appreciated being in an environment where there were many individuals just like them. Frequently, being with other CPL patients helped patients feel like they were not alone and gave them an opportunity to develop peer support with people who understood exactly what they were going through.
At Mid-Hudson, everyone was a CPL 330-20. We were all in the same boat. We understood each other. We had the same goals. Your patients are in and out all the time. It's a predicament for us because there's a lot of pressure. The other patients present conflict and make us vulnerable to them. We have to be extra vigilant. We are held to a higher standard.
Patients discussed the disappointment they felt while at their secure facility when they realized that the CPL 330-20 plea would actually mean that they would have to spend years as an inpatient. While this is more of a commentary on the criminal justice system, it is important to note that patients felt let down by their defense attorneys and the judges, and this is something that patients struggled with at their secure facility and continue to struggle with at their civil facility.
When I took the plea, I was told that it would describe my crime as not guilty. So if I am not guilty and I am psychiatrically stable and not violent, why am I still here? The dichotomy of that is difficult. There is a fault or failure of the system. I was misled by the criminal justice system about the plea.
But we all did something to come here, and we accepted the plea. We all did something, we know that. But with this plea, the nonviolent offender and the violent offender, everyone gets the same long 30-year sentence. For 30 seconds or 1 minute of your life, you made a decision, and that decision changed your life forever. Before that decision, my life was normal, perfect in every other way. I have kids who are in college, grandkids. I want to be with them.
Before any judge should hand out this plea, they should educate the user. This should be an obligation of the judge.
I just received a question for Tony about whether these are all CPL 33020 patients, and yes, the focus groups were all with CPL 33020 patients, individuals who had been found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. Another theme from forensic facilities is there were a few CPL patients, especially those who were in a forensic facility many years ago, who reported that they remembered not feeling like they were treated with respect or dignity when they were at their forensic facility. Examples of the lack of dignity towards patients included secure facility routines that require patients to line up, be counted, being marched from here to there, calling patients' names out loud for medication administration, the use of restraints, or even physical or emotional abuse. Again, as I said, this was emphasized mostly by those who had transferred many years ago.
Don't get us wrong. There were some good things about Mid-Hudson, but don't forget, Mid-Hudson was run with fear. So you just shut your mouth, and you all know it. I would never want to go back there. They put patients in straitjackets. Life is still better here. The hope is here, too.
Another difficulty for patients coming from secure facilities pertained to the lack of realistic expectations about what happens at civil facilities. Unrealistic expectations included, for example, things like the types of housing they would have, the number of groups or programs they would participate in, and the privileges or freedoms they would have at the civil facility. While patients had several levels of false expectations, perhaps the most disappointing of all was when patients learned that instead of an imminent release to the community, in fact, they would have to wait years before even achieving an escorted furlough status.
My expectations were that I would be here for 1 year. I got dismayed with the whole process when I learned that I would be here much, much longer.
I thought my civil would be like Mid-Hudson in regards to continuing my recovery process and in terms of the kinds of groups offered. The frustration that I'm going through now is that it is very different here. I have much less programming here and no work.
Just a few themes from the civil facilities now. Overall, most patients were pleased with the programming they were receiving at their civil facilities. In general, patients reported that they were involved with their treatment plans, hospital activities, participating in things like town council, community meetings, and felt somewhat satisfied with their treatment progress. Patients reported that for the most part, the civil facility felt more humane, saying also there was more hope at their civil. Some patients even noted a more beautiful physical environment, and of course, support they felt from staff was critical for them.
Excuse me, Deb. Could you just clarify and define what you mean by civil facilities versus forensic hospitals?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So adult civil facilities are secure facilities, Mid-Hudson, Kirby, and Rochester Forensic, and they have higher security, higher security levels, so that patients have very limited freedoms and are not able to come and go, and more security staff, versus our civil adult facilities.
Like Capital District Psychiatric Center or Buffalo Psychiatric Center. So our psychiatric centers would be the civil facilities, yes.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
The treatment team here is very helpful. They want to know how I feel. The social worker and doctor ask me what I think. I have a good say in my treatment plans and goals. They are willing to work with my family and my friends, who are all a big support to me.
At the same time, patients desired more individual therapeutic relationships with staff, more groups, and more educational and vocational opportunities at their civil facilities. Patients reported that it was a bit of a culture shock for them to come from an environment where they were actively engaged in treatment or work to an environment where it felt like they spent less time in treatment and work. This created a lack of continuity of programming for them. At one facility, a patient said that she dedicated her time to organizing bake sales and sewing pillows so that she could raise money for a work program at her facility that was discontinued because of funding cuts. More individual therapy was especially desired by patients, and it was described by patients as transformative and a key to recovery. With fewer work opportunities and individual therapy, patients felt that too much downtime would become counter-therapeutic, and some felt like they were languishing.
You get desensitized in a way that is very severe. I've been at my civil for 1 year. It is lacking any intellectual endeavors, so as a result, the creative side dies out. I use every opportunity I can to leave the ward, but still you become institutionalized. I left Mid-Hudson as a design-level draftsman, ready to go. But I have to come to this quagmire, this quicksand.
It was a big loss for me to come here and not be able to work. I could work at Kirby. I'm able to work. I'm able to go to school, but I can't do any of that here. I want to be able to use my time wisely.
Patients said that they desire to have special programming and awards for CPL patients at their civils. CPL patients reported that it was difficult to be integrated with civil patients for a number of reasons. Civil patients act out more, causing civil patients to fear that they would get caught up in a civil patient's volatile behavior or lose privileges, saying that they were also more invested, they had more to lose. They also said that voluntary patients tend to be more symptomatic, making it difficult to develop good peer relationships or have quality group discussion. And they also said the stigma associated with their CPL status presented unique challenges for them.
There is a stigma attached to being a forensic patient. A big part of the process is forgiveness. You have to forgive yourself and don't keep penalizing yourself. It's hard for other patients to help you do this.
We have to be careful here, though. We are 330s. You have to be careful what you say in groups because the other patients will use it against you.
Patients felt that there was a lack of connectedness between doing well and getting discharged to the community. CPL patients are often the most stable patients at civil facilities and are compliant with treatment, and yet their compliance to them did not seem to help speed up the release process. In contrast, other patients, voluntary patients, 730s, were volatile, symptomatic, and got released to the community relatively quickly. This was especially difficult for them to watch.
Here there are voluntary patients, and you see them come and go. Even when they start trouble and are still trouble, they still can go. Meanwhile, we have to weave and bop situations with these voluntary patients, and we have to take the hits or else we get into trouble, and we have a lot more to lose.
The staff will tell you here the CPLs are the best behaved, but when explaining why it is taking so long for you to get out, the staff say, we have to show Albany that you have been here long enough.
We have to watch other patients leave here who are still in a psychotic state. They get to go while we are stuck inside.
You have to be better than the angels themselves to get out of here.
Patients long to be apprised of the parameters of their inpatient stay with definitive standards of behavior and goals for treatment, including a target discharge date. Patients reported that once they transferred to a civil facility, there were fewer standards of behavior other than the general goals of complying with treatment and being incident-free. And without target date goals that are tied to achieving the next step or privilege, it felt to them that their time at the civil was directionless, and it was hard to hold on to their hope for a better life one day.
I wish we had a time frame, like in 3 to 6 months, we can apply for this level versus staff just saying, let's see how it goes. Knowing a time frame will help give you hope. Without a time frame, you kind of lose hope.
When you lose your hope and you feel you're never getting out, that's punishment.
Patients felt like once they were labeled forensic, there was a one-size-fits-all approach to address their treatment needs and assessment of risk. While patients acknowledged that they should be held to higher standards because of their past crimes, they felt the type or amount of treatment did not meet their needs. They felt that all CPLs, the violent and the nonviolent, were lumped together and that the time they spent as an inpatient exceeded their needs.
I was at Mid-Hudson for 7 years. I behaved well. There was structure at Mid-Hudson. There are some things that have been helpful here. The Sunshine Program, the groups, AA meetings. So what prevented me from leaving now? Only the fact that I'm a 330/20 patient, and I have a wife and a daughter who are waiting for me.
Patients reported that the time from commitment to community was excessively and unnecessarily slow. There are many contributing factors to the stagnancy of the CPL transition process. Sometimes delays for patients are due to slower patient progress, and the patients understood this. Other times delays are due to factors such as application review in facility or here in central office. Delays are due to attorneys' reports or the court approval process. These delays were the most frustrating for patients to tolerate. Coupled with an environment where there's less structured time in their days, resentment towards the delays and towards Albany would grow.
I was told the reason for the delay in my step levels was Albany. It's the Albany torture chamber. My social worker has actually told me that if I weren't a CPL, I would discharge you.
One last question that we asked staff was, if you had a magic wand and could change one thing for patients, what would you change? And one frequent, emphatic response was the length of time it takes for patients to return to the community.
I can't begin to tell you how hard it is for patients and how frustrating it is for them. The longer they are here, the harder it makes it for them to transition to society. And society has changed since they were there last and continues to change. Institutionalization decreases their ability to succeed.
And the last thing that I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about is what I'm often asked most frequently since those focus groups is, so what impact did the focus groups have on central office? What's happened since then? As I said earlier, I think the focus groups did help us to at least briefly place ourselves in the patient's shoes and to incorporate their voices, their concerns, their ideas, their needs, in our planning for programs, strategies, and policies for CPL individuals. For example, since 2009, we've developed a closer working relationship with Consumer Affairs, brainstorming with them on how we can increase vocational opportunities, access to computers, transitions from secure to civil facilities, and engagement with families. In fact, this year we've recently sponsored several presentations by David Kaczynski, who spoke to secure facility staff on the topic of families as secondary consumers as an attempt to further sensitize staff to the needs of families. We've also developed and monitored adherence to performance indicators that measure our turnaround time on facility applications to help us ensure that there are not unnecessary delays in paperwork. We continue our customized training efforts with our facilities and discuss with facility staff strategies on how we can best serve CPL individuals. And as Harry explained in his overview, the CPL process is a complicated one. There are a lot of layers that need monitoring and training on. And of course, we continue to work with community organizations such as the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, and the Mental Health Association in New York State, and others to help us improve our services for our population.
Thank you, Deb. So while we're waiting for some questions to come in, I had a couple things I wanted to just touch base with you on. So folks, please feel free to send in your questions. We've got plenty of time here to answer questions for you. So a couple things for our advocates out there. I do want to just bring up a couple of points. So there's a lot of language that is used in the forensic world that we typically in the advocacy world and in the recovery and rehab world don't use. So words like, mental illness, mental disease, defect, patients. Those are legal terms that are. So if we want to be advocates, we need to know that terminology. I understand that a lot of people may find that offensive. However, as I put it when somebody called me on using the word patient at one of our forensic PNG network, our forensic peer networking group meetings, what I told them was that I could use the word consumer and I could use the word recipient or client or whatever else the person wanted me to use. However, the reason I chose not to do it in this particular setting was that a patient has rights. A patient has legal rights. A consumer does not. So that is a legal term that we use in all of our documents and things like that. If we put consumer in there, a consumer does not warrant or necessitate legal rights. So that's the importance of using the legal terminology, even though it may be distasteful for us. The other thing I wanted to point out was that you'll notice that both Harry and Deb talked about not responsible due to mental disease or defect. So again, that's legal terminology. That is not the same thing as NGRI or not guilty by reason of insanity. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Well, actually, the official label used to be referred to as not guilty by reason of insanity, and then it was changed to not guilty by reason of mental disease and defect. Not responsible
Yeah.
by mental disease or defect. Now, another term that Harry used when he was talking about the standard upon which an individual can get transferred from a secure facility to a civil facility is dangerous mental disorder. And that's another legal term that is used to decide whether or not clinically a patient, an individual, can be transferred from a secure facility to a civil facility.
Mm-hmm. So let me just follow up. Let me follow up with that. And the reason why I think it's important, because when it was first explained to me, I thought that this was important to note, is that the not guilty by reason of insanity that other states may have.
Right.
What we're saying is the person is not responsible, which is different than saying not guilty. Absolutely. So when someone accepts a not responsible by reason of mental disease or defect plea, what they're saying is essentially that they are guilty of this crime.
Of the act.
Yes, they are guilty of this act, but they are not responsible for it,
right,
because of their mental defect or disease. So I want people to understand that people are not pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. They're pleading not responsible. So I for whatever reason, I think that's important to delineate. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I would just say that from a criminal justice system perspective, the disposition is not, in any state, whether it's NGRI or not guilty, not responsible, the disposition is considered a favorable disposition for the person that's doing that plea or that receives that verdict. That person is technically not guilty. It's not looked at as a conviction on their record. It doesn't show up, as on their rap sheets as an offense that they've been convicted for. So they, to some degree, have been absolved from their connection to that act from a criminal justice perspective.
Thank you. One other thing I wanted to just point out was that, there's a lot of stigma with people with mental health problems. Most people with mental health issues do not commit violent acts. Most people do not commit nonviolent acts. Most people do not do that. In fact, they are more likely to be victims of violence rather than perpetrators of violence. So although we are talking a lot today, obviously, about forensics and people with mental health problems and their involvement with the law, that is not the norm. That is not the majority. That is the minority. So I just don't want to accidentally perpetuate any stigma that we're violent or anything like that. But for the people who do end up in our system, it's important to understand that culture. It's important as advocates to understand that trajectory and what we need to do to be helpful for people. So I've got a couple of questions. Do you have an average length of time that patients stay in a secure facility?
We do. I don't have those numbers in front of me right now.
As I recall, it's about 3.5 to 4 years.
Okay. All right. And then there's another question here. Could people go through the process for restoration of competency for people committed to facility under CPL 730? For example, treatment, periodic reassessments, role of locality, or state government. And I'm not sure how that is.
Well, when they are committed for competency evaluation, the charge to the state is restoration of competency. I'm not certain whether I'm answering all of this question or not. So when we get a person is charged with a felony and they are committed to one of our secure facilities, typically, the charge of that secure facility is to restore that person to competency so that they can resume the criminal justice process, the trial process. Now, having said that, I'll make a distinction between two levels of felonies, or two stages of the felony process. One is indictment, post-indictment, and the other is pre-indictment. When someone has not been indicted and they've been found incompetent, they are committed to us for 3 months. If the person has been indicted, then they're committed to us for 12 months. In the case of the latter, that if the person is not restored, that length of time can be extended through a court process. In the case of the former, where the person has not been indicted, we can release that person and the district attorney of the local government unit has to refile to continue that person as a CPL patient.
So one of our questions is actually a very common one that I've heard, and it was also in the quotes that you had. So what can we do for people who accept the 330-20 plea and are in our forensic hospitals right now? There is no time served, so there is no definitive time for when they get out, and it is dependent upon a number of things, evaluations, etc. So, but there is no definitive time, and for some people, they feel like they were misled when they took the plea, and that you'll be in for 6 months or you'll be in for a year, and really there isn't any control that anybody can guarantee over that. So they did not know that. So what the question is that how can we better educate people around the 330-20 plea and what that means, and whether or not it would be better to make a choice to go to prison rather than forensic, a hospital?
Well, that's a great question, Tony, and and I put that quote in this presentation exactly for this reason, because I wanted us all to brainstorm and think about this. We've had conversations about how we can, as one of the patients suggested, we need to do more education of defense attorneys, legal aid, judges, courts. Right now, a lot of our training efforts are just focused on serving our patients in the facilities, and we do have very good working relationships with other entities in the community. In fact, Harry is our master trainer and works with them. But we haven't gotten to the point yet where we've developed a sort of a formal mechanism for educating the larger criminal justice community about this plea. And although I have done a little bit of work to see what kind of materials are out there, to look into what kind of legal education credits and courses. I started to do some research on those, because those courses are reaching our criminal justice, our attorneys. So we're in the very early stages of thinking about this. That's just a very honest answer.
Yeah, and I can comment on that as well, Tony, that the point at which they are making the plea on the verdict is arrived. The state is really not involved. It's a local issue, and very often the state is not even aware of what's going on. We don't know about these things until the person literally show up at our doorstep. with a court order saying, hey, I've been found not responsible. And the charges to the state, as I depicted earlier, is to do the examination, write the reports, and so forth. So we're not in a position at this point to intervene at the plea bargaining process. Now, Deborah mentioned a point, and I think that we might be able to do, I hadn't thought about, is getting some brochures out there or just an overview, and to help educate the public about the advantages and disadvantages of taking this plea.
You know, and I think Harry makes a good point that actually when you look at what we are charged with, our task is to focus on our patients and our facilities, but at the same time, to the extent that we can have teaching moments with the larger community, then I think that it would be wonderful if we could go in that direction, because, you know, at the end of the day, everyone benefits if we're able to keep each other informed about this plea and how it works.
Thank you. So we have another good question here. Excuse me. So we have, I'm going to quote here, we have perhaps 9 330/20 patients on our civil inpatient facility. They are then a decided minority on their ward. Given Deb's focus group findings, would they be better served on a regional civil facility, albeit further removed from their families, but with enough others with similar problems and with specialized staff?
That's a great question. Maybe a loaded question, but it's a good question.
It's something that's been discussed.
Yes, I mean, I don't have a answer, certainly a yes/no answer, but what we're hoping is that through our conversations with our patients, that we're alerted to what their needs are, what the concerns are, so that we can make better informed decisions about strategies and programs. So in your case, you know, 9 CPL patients, I mean, some of the things that you would think about is that 9 patients is different than having 1 or 2 patients. Some of the other things that, so in other words, that 9 individual group may be enough to deliver services in a way that's most beneficial to them. But something else to consider whenever I think we're talking about regionalization is that we also want to encourage connections with family, especially at our, you know, when you're at the civil facilities closer to discharge, closer to release, and so it's easier to make those connections when you are closer to community. And so that's something that really needs to be weighed against grouping, you know, having patients moved to an area further away from their family and their home.
Would you mind talking a little bit about what we've done over at Mohawk Valley?
Sure. Do you want to talk, Gary, or
Which aspect?
just in terms of our
That we have a
moving
specialized
patients?
ward there. And also, Harry, could you step a little closer to the microphone? You're coming through a little quiet.
Okay. Mohawk Valley, we have a special unit there. It's well, with Mohawk Valley and Hutchings, first Hutchings Psychiatric Center. Hutchings transferred all their CPL patients who were at a certain stage in what we call their treatment path over to Mohawk Valley, and we took in some patients from the Capital District Psychiatric Center as well as Mid-Hudson. So patients that would normally go to Hutchings now are redirected to Mohawk Valley. We tried to get a special, it's basically a forensic unit at Mohawk Valley, where it's a special ward. We've got a house only forensic patients, and it responds to some of the things that was raised, and as Deborah mentioned in her study, specialized care in that getting them out of the way of places where they might be taunted or, you know, tempted to act out, what have you, and trying to develop programs that attend to their needs, such as the vocational rehab And some of our forensic patients, as Deborah's already pointed out, are somewhat very stable and really advanced, so that some of our chronic and civil patients are not forensic patients. So just trying to create a special unit there to zero in on that population and attend to their needs in a more particular way, sensitive and responsive way. Deborah, you have a comment?
Well, it was a very, decision long in the making, and there are lots to consider in terms of when these patients are ready for privileges, how are we going to keep connections with family and friends, and when these patients are ready for privileges, how do we accommodate that? We had to make sure that we had all our, ducks in a row, so to speak, before we actually went forward with that decision.
Right. There are still some logistical issues that we're trying to work out, but this is kind of experiment that we have to go through to see actually what is the best configuration for forensic patients after they leave a secure facility. So we have this, I would call it experiment going on. Right.
So if you don't mind me just adding to that from a recipient perspective. So and one of the things that I just want to say is that the findings from your focus groups that were presented today it's almost universal with what we've heard in our own, just discussions and our visits with patients at the different hospitals. So it's amazing the amount of uniformity in what is discussed.
That's the reality.
So I think that what I'm saying now is fairly generalizable to folks based on the limited amount of folks that I've talked to from the different facilities. So what I've heard is that, at the civil facilities, it's noisier. You also have more access to drugs and alcohol, although I know the facilities do the best they can. It's not as secure as a forensic hospital. It's not going to be as secure. So people do have more access to be tempted with that. You also have a lot of different, you have people at different stages of their recovery, so you have more acting out, more possible incidents and things like that. It's a lot more chaos, a lot less structure, as all the stuff that you said. So for people that I know who have actually moved into this forensic facility or this forensic ward in a civil hospital, the trade-off, to answer this person's question, the trade-off was around between family who was close by and making a decision to take a leap of faith and try to be around living in a more supportive environment, even though that they had to sacrifice their family visits and their connection there. But overall, they feel like it was the right decision to make. So, and we do have different levels of, all the different hospitals have different levels of internet access. So at the hospital that this person was at, he did have internet access, and now he does not. So, but we are working on that as a whole within OMH to get uniform internet access to everyone as, it becomes ubiquitous in our society, and it's essentially replaced, almost the telephone and almost certainly the writing, and the U.S. Postal Service is certainly feeling the effects of email. So, the time has come to use that as an effective communication tool for folks, and to make that available to them. So those are the trade-offs that are there. And then also at Mohawk Valley, I've heard that all their rules were geared around civil, so they were a little stringent, and they are reevaluating. They're very open, and they're reevaluating some of the rules around security and safety, i.e., headphones with cords and things like that. So because a lot of people do use headphones and MP3 players as calming tools, as wellness tools. So that's important, and it's good that they're open to making those changes there. So it sounds like it's a good work in progress, and that they're being very reasonable and flexible and attending to people's needs as they come up. Okay, another question. How does payment for treatment differ from CPL 33020 status and CPL 730 status? Who is responsible for payment of treatment?
For 730, I'm sure it's the county responsibility. But 330s, I'm not certain. It might be state responsibility.
Yeah.
and I'll fix my screen in just a minute here. Do you think the reason for such a long process of discharge is because forensic individuals have to serve their time for the crime that they are responsible for, like someone without a mental illness would when sent to prison?
Well, I think it feels that way to patients, but it's not, there is nothing that says that they have to serve a certain amount of time for a particular crime. And the biggest predictor of length of stay, as I mentioned, there's many predictors, but one of them is just the treatment progress of that the patient is, the treatment experience and the treatment progress. And you know, there are some cases, there are some individuals that once they come to our secure facilities do very well with medication or treatment compliance or, you know, participation in the treatment mall. But in other situations, patients may be more treatment refractory, it may be a little bit more difficult, or it's harder to get medication or the right medication to help stabilize them and to help them on that path to wellness. So I think that largely it's just that's a big piece of it. It's just the treatment journey and the treatment progress they're making along the way.
Thank you. Just a comment from someone. They said that much networking and educating with the criminal justice community has helped. So they agree. And next question is, I realize this is a very broad question, but as what you have called a secondary consumer, so in other words, families as secondary consumers, what is the best way to advocate for appropriate treatment for a family member involved with the county correctional system?
Can you say that again, Tony?
Sure. What is the best way to advocate for a family member involved in the county correctional system?
So if I understood the question correctly, the inquirer wants to know how a family member who has a member in the county correctional system can interact with that correctional system, or advocate for them, advocate for their family member who may be incarcerated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially if they're feeling like the person is not getting good treatment.
Oh, okay, okay. You know, the county correctional individuals who have mental health issues in our county correctional system, that's a really tough issue because, as you probably know, it's very decentralized. So we have 62 counties, 5 of them New York City, but the other 57 upstate are all locally operated. That means that the criminal justice oversight authority is the county sheriff, and then the way that that particular jail receives mental health services varies by every county. Now, in most cases, the local county Department of Mental Health is responsible for providing mental health services to jails, not in all cases. In some counties, we have private vendors who are providing mental health services to the jail. I mean, to start with, I would say that family needs to work with the County Department of Mental Health. In addition, it's always a good thing to reach out to our field offices. We have field offices, 4 or 5 regional field offices in the state, 5, and we have a forensic liaison in every field office. And one of the hats that forensic liaison wears is to help the coordination and linkages of services for individuals who are involved in the criminal justice system. And you may find that forensic liaison has a lot of wisdom, local wisdom, about how family members or other are engaged with the mental health services and treatment for family members.
And if you don't mind, just me speaking a little bit from an advocate's point of view, as I often tell people, you know, when you're involved with just one bureaucracy, like the Office of Mental Health, it can be, we know it's fragmented and difficult to navigate. Now, if you're involved in both Office of Mental Health and criminal justice system, it's a nightmare. It is very, very difficult, and the expectations are very different. So when I have people calling me up, they generally what they want me to do is to beat up the criminal justice system and make the criminal justice system do what we want them to do, or what they want them to do. And that's not how it works. This is not how we do things. Number one is we don't have any real juice to do that. Number two is it's always better, at least in my mind, to build relationships. So what I would suggest to any family members that want to do good advocacy is to build the relationships with the people at the facility, with the treatment team at the facility. They're going to have a different perspective than, so if you're talking about prison or jail, they're going to have a different perspective than the people in the jail do, than the corrections officers. They're going to have a different set of values and different mission. Excuse me. But I think that's the best way into trying to be helpful, and to also realize that you're a parent. You're not going to be, or you're a family member, you're not going to be objective. This is not going to happen. I'm a parent. I'm not going to be objective with my kid, and I'm going to tend to probably believe my kid over everybody else. Try to remember, though, that there are usually at least 2 to 3 sides to every story, and when people automatically start just siding with their child, which is normal and natural, it may not always be accurate. So jumping in and trying to beat up the corrections officers, it has not been an effective strategy based on what I've seen, because they can forget to tell you when the next treatment team meeting is. They can do those things, and oops, So and it can happen. And is it right? Is it fair? Probably not, but it happens. And make yourself a good advocate by developing a good relationship and trying to be as objective as possible. That would be my advice in general for this. So I hope that's helpful. It makes sense. Let's see. Okay. One more question here. We have been criticized by victims and district attorneys for fast-tracking CPL patients. In the focus group, was there an awareness by the patients of the other stakeholders?
So an awareness that, in one hand, CPLs were saying it's so slow, but then this person is saying that on the other hand, we get criticized if we go too fast. So it feels often that we're caught between a rock and a hard place, in terms of what rhythm should we implement to, move this treatment journey along. I'm trying to remember back. I think I think the patients that I spoke to did understand that they were coming from histories of violence in some cases, or maybe perhaps one turning point event that changed their life as well as someone else, and that there was a victim, and that there was very good reason why individuals did not want to see them, released to the community too prematurely or too quickly. So I think there was an appreciation of that, but I think what they would say to that is just, but then how long? How long, and then how long is too long? How long is enough? And therein lies their frustration.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any more questions come up. So were there any closing remarks or anything that you wanted to leave us with?
I just wondered if you had mentioned a couple minutes ago, Tony, the work you'd been doing with PNGs and the regs, and I wondered if this would be a good opportunity for you to share with everyone again what that is, because I think that's a great development the past couple of years here.
Sure. What we do is we do something called the Forensic Peer Networking Group. Now, there are a number of peer networking. So for people in our field, people generally know what peer networking groups are. They're an established group. It's a nationwide thing that happens in all the states where local peers or consumers get together and discuss, things that are going on in the community, or sharing, or it takes a number of different local focuses. So what we wanted to do was, as an offshoot of our larger group meeting that we have, we wanted to connect the different forensic sites together and start sharing sharing information so people could see each other. There is some cross-fertilization from the forensic hospitals. So we have the 4 forensic hospitals right now, and Buffalo, which has a high forensic civil population. And then hopefully we'll be, at our next meeting, we'll actually have the Mohawk Valley Forensic Unit in there as well. So what we do is we connect everybody through video. We do this quarterly. We started off a little over a year ago, last July, and we were doing it every other month. And some of the things that have come out of it were some sharing on strategies on where one place had MP3 players and another place didn't, and one place had like a procedure around the hospital forensic committee, so that we shared some of that the last time. We started talking about RAP plans, so we've gone in and we've done what that stands for Wellness Recovery Action Planning. Excuse me, it's been recognized recently as an evidence-based practice. So you can go online, look that up. That's Mary Ellen Copeland's stuff. That's Wellness Recovery Action Planning. So we've taken that, adapted it to forensics, and brought that into our forensic hospitals. We've done it at Rochester and Mid-Hudson, and we've got Kirby coming up pretty soon here. So those are some of the things that we've focused on. We're trying to focus on the things that help mitigate risk factors as well. Employment, connection to family, self-help and support groups. So we want to try and focus on those things. One of the big things that I learned was that doing individual advocacy from where I'm at is not a good idea. It is not. It doesn't seem to be very helpful in the long run. And the nice guy that I try to be, I got probably bamboozled a couple of times. But I do try to do good systems advocacy. So I think that's a good thing, and I'll leave the other stuff alone because I think I did more harm than good. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So anything else? Yeah, I think we're moving in a good direction. It takes a long time, and we've had a lot of turnover here at the Office of Mental Health with our leadership in forensics. But we're continuing to do good work with the folks in forensics. They've been very good to us, and I think we've been very good to them. And I hope to continue all of that. So I know it's slow going for anybody out there that's in a forensic unit right now that's listening, and I do apologize, but it's the nature of the beast, and we don't let it off the plate, right? We're always bugging each other to keep pushing each other. Okay, so for next month we have. I'm gonna have to move my stuff around. So next month we have our November webinar. It's going to be our annual State of the State of the Office of Consumer Affairs. So we're going to do an update, like we always do every November, on the activities, the initiatives, and the status of our office. So that's November 16th from 1 to 2:30. And to register, there's the link there. That link will also go up on our website, on our Office of Mental Health website under webcasts, and we'll also be sending it out on our listserv. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. I hope this was educational for folks and opened up a door into an area that we don't often talk about. Again, I want to let people know that you will be getting a pop-up window. If the window does not pop up because you have a pop-up blocker or something like that, just send me an email, and I will make sure that you get your certificate. Okay. Please take the time to fill out the survey. That would be very helpful, and I hope to see you all next month. Thanks again, Deb. Thanks, Harry. Bye-bye, everyone.